Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the joint meeting of the Tewksbury Select Board and Tewksbury Board of Health. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to the Chair of the Board of Health to introduce her team. Do a roll call.
Sure. Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting for Tewksbury Board of Health to order. Today is the 28th of January, and the time is 7:01. I'll take a roll call of the Board of Health members. So myself, Melissa Braga, Chair.
Susan Amato, Vice Chair.
Chris Janacek, member.
Amy Page, member.
George Ferdinand, clerk.
Okay. We also have the Health Director here in the back as well, Shannon, and we do have a quorum.
All right. My name is Mark Ratman. I'm the Chair of the Board of Selectmen, and I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to open up to the board. We'll do a roll call. So we'll start.
Rich Russo, clerk, select board.
Patrick Holland, member, select board.
James Mackey, member, select board.
And we have Eric Ryder online. Eric? Not sure if he's having problems, but Eric Ryder will be joining us as well online. All right, before we start our meeting, I'd like to ask everyone to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, if you would, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As mentioned, the purpose of this meeting is to have a joint meeting with the Board of Health and the Select Board to go over the review of the Hillman Energy and the Coast Community Agreement. We're going to allow residents to be heard tonight. At this time, I'm going to hand it over to the town manager to introduce some people that will be speaking tonight.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, and I would just like to take a minute to introduce the professionals we have online, which our special counsel is Jeff Bernstein, right here on the screen. And Jeff, you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone.
Okay, good. And then we also have Mike Nichols, who's also online. He's our fire safety specialist.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. How about now? Can you hear me now?
Better.
Okay. And we also have the fire chief and the deputy chief in the back room here. Deputy Chief Paul Goodadaro and Fire Chief Joe Kearns as well. So just want to recognize those people. And then I will, I guess, get started. So just as a refresher, I wanted to just go through the process a little bit before we go through the HCA so people can understand what the role of the town is in the process. So as you know, this Hillman Energy Center is a proposed 125 megawatt storage project that will interconnect to an existing substation that's right close to this region, right close to this location. At the peak output, this project will discharge electricity necessary to power nearly 125,000 homes for a 4-hour period. It's located at 7375 Hillman Street on approximately 4.3 acres of land. So why the Energy Facility Siting Board is the siting, why is the Energy Facility Siting Board the siting authority, the EFSB as you'll hear it referred to here. This is Mass General Law Chapter 48, Section 3, and it intends that if a proposed use of land or structure is reasonably necessary for the convenience or welfare of the public, it can be exempted from local zoning oversight through petition to the Energy Facility Siting Board. So things like utilities are sometimes regulated by the state, not at the local level, which is a process we're not used to because it doesn't happen all the time, and it doesn't lend itself well to the transparency that residents are used to and demand. So we're trying to do our best, like by meetings like this, to try to make the process as transparent as possible, even though it's a state process and goes through state boards. So the FSB acts as a fact finder and approves the project based on evidence presented during the process. They initially conduct a public hearing, usually within the community that's affected. That hearing was held on October 9th at the Tewksbury Memorial High School. We, the town, we have an opportunity to petition to intervene, to become part of that process. So groups that wish to be involved in the siting division proceeding beyond providing public comments at the hearing may seek either to intervene as a party or to participate as a limited participant. So the town has obviously petitioned as an intervening party so that we have all the rights we can through this process, and so has the Board of Health. They've also petitioned to be an intervening party, and they've been accepted. And other parties have petitioned to be intervening parties and also limited participants. I'm not going to go through all of them because I got myself in trouble by omitting some last time, so I won't name them all. Discovery. This is part of the process. Developer or utility company responds to written questions. This is what discovery is from the siting division, staff, and individuals or groups that have been permitted to intervene as a party. So the town is able to conduct discovery. So is the Board of Health and any other interveners. They may also be requested to respond to discovery by the developer or the utility company and the staff, and may be required to respond to discovery by other interveners. So the town intends to submit on February 6th questions and use experts to assist and supplement the inquiries made by the town. So evidentiary hearings, witnesses are questioned under oath by siting division staff, developer or the utility company, and interveners in this process that resemble a hearing in a court of law. So that will be starting shortly. Briefs, the developer, interveners, and in some cases limited participants provide written arguments as to why evidence indicates that the proposed project should or should not be approved. So like I said, it's much like a court proceeding, and it's held before the EFSB. So ultimately, the issued decision or order is done through proceedings under the EFSB jurisdiction. The sited division staff issues a tentative decision approving or rejecting the project. The parties receiving the tentative decision to the scheduled siting board meeting for review and comment. After the comment period, the siting board meets in public to vote on whether to accept the tentative decision. The final decision reflects any change made at the siting board meeting. So if there's a recommendation made to the EFSB, there's deliberation and input, and then they ultimately make a final decision. I would expect that process should take us through the spring of 2026. So what is the town's role in that process? As many of you know by now, the town is not the permitting entity. The town will participate as an intervening party and represent the interests of the town. The town will use the host community agreement tool to gain conditions and concessions that will be incorporated into the permit process. Taking a purely adversarial position on this project will deny the town the opportunity to incorporate safety conditions through this process. So now getting into the host community agreement itself, the host community agreement is available online, as well as the appendix is also available online for review. And the rest of this presentation is sort of a summary of the host community agreement. And once I'm done presenting that, we will be happy to take questions about the agreement and take that feedback and see what we can do. This is a draft document. It's tentatively agreed to by both parties. The key tenets and elements of this agreement are basically agreed to by both parties. There are some there's some legal language that is still being ironed out, but the basic tenets of this proposal have been agreed to as a draft document. That does not mean that it can't be changed or added to in the future. It's just sort of where we are at this point in time, and some of the major elements are in place. So the pilot agreement is obviously a big piece of this. It's actually a separate document, but it's referred to in the HCA. So over a 20-year period, the two parties have agreed that the minimum floor for the annual pilot will be $2 million plus a 1% CPA surcharge. So we had started at $1 million, and that we've managed to negotiate that number up to $2 million, and I expect that that number will be higher than that, based on what we think the value of the project ultimately will be. So that will be a source of about $40 million worth of revenue for the town over a 20-year period. Additionally, Hillman has agreed to $3.8 million in payments to the town through this host community agreement. Some of those payments are annual payments over the 20-year period. Some of those payments are one-time payments. And if you look at some of the HCAs around that have been done, either in Carver or in Medway, the value of this HCA is almost double what those other HCAs are. So this is a table that shows you what is agreed to by both parties. So the first one is technical review, which is making sure that the town does not bear any costs for all the technical experts that you see behind me on the screen, and the cost for that. So there is a not to exceed $250,000 commitment by Hillman to reimburse us for costs that we incur because of technical assistance and experts that we need to help us get through this process and protect all the interests of the town, especially the public safety interests. The next item is $50,000. This is a one-time payment for energy capacity, and it's an energy capacity study in this area, which would be basically an economic development tool for the town to help it in the future. And we felt that that was connected to this area because it's all related to energy. And one of the biggest struggles communities are having today is they're just energy is not available in certain parts of the town to facilitate the economic development that is live and in demand today. So the next item is $150,000. It's a one-time fixed payment for EV conversion program. So that's to enhance our electric vehicle fleet in the town. Public training, this is an annual payment that the town will receive each year up to $50,000. And that's for training for the fire department primarily. So that would pay for not only training itself, but also the overtime to fill the back shifts that might need to be filled if we have firefighters that are in training. So that's an annual payment of $50,000 a year. Fire suppression materials, this is also an annual payment of $10,000 a year that these are materials that are related to this type of, fire if one were to happen. So that's up to $10,000 a year for materials that's available annually to the town. Peer review, this is a one-time expenditure of $100,000. Again, similar to the first one, which is basically lawyers and technical experts, but this is also peer review of things like engineers that are needed to help with peer review of certain documents. It'll be helpful during, if this is permitted, when things have to go to the building department and things that need to be reviewed by a third party that we don't pay for them, that they're paid for by this fund. Property value security account. So this is a refundable, this is to recognize that if there is any impact on property value in the area, that this account will be established at $50,000 and replenished every time there is any type of award from that account up to 5 years. And then the next line is $25,000 per claim. So if somebody, wants to put a claim in that they feel like they've lost value, they can do that through this account. And there will be 3 independent assessors that are available to them. They can pick one assessor, and that assessor will then determine whether or not they're entitled to their claim, and then that will pay, if they are, it'll be paid out of that account. Then there are 4 fixed expenses that are social programs. One is youth sports for $50,000. One is the food bank for $50,000. One is parks and recreation for $50,000, and Council on Aging is also receiving $50,000. These are all one-time payments. And then stormwater enhancement is actually an annual payment that we receive every year at $70,000, and that would go towards capital infrastructure for stormwater. And as you know, this project does have a stormwater component, so we thought it was important to incorporate something related to stormwater into the HCA. And then there is also a one-time technical rescue equipment appropriation for $80,000 that will cover the fire department's purchase of equipment that would be related to responding to this type of project or facility. And then getting into the permitting and cooperation, so Hillman Energy Center shall be responsible for applying, among other things, all applicable and required local permits, and shall be responsible for the payment of all permits and inspection fees up to an approved cap. Hillman Energy Center agrees to on-site inspections and reviews by the town's third-party fire safety expert as reasonably required for approval of applicable local permits during construction or operation of the project. And what's most important about that one is that we have asked and they have agreed that they would pay for a third-party expert throughout this process that we would use for inspections and oversight of the project to help the town and assist us in making sure that everything is done in the safest possible manner, and that it does meet the NFPA 855 standards and the UL 9540 standards. The parties agree that to the best of their knowledge and belief, such local permits include without limitation, so Tewksbury Inspectional Services, which includes building, electrical, plumbing, mechanical, and demolition. It also includes the Tewksbury Fire Department, which includes the Mass Fire Code, and it also includes Tewksbury Conservation Commission. So getting into public safety and emergency preparedness, a lot of these things are covered in the appendix in the back of that HCA document. So an emergency response plan must be submitted before commissioning, and it should cover all phases, not just when the project is complete, but it should cover an emergency response plan for during construction, during commissioning, during operation, and also during decommissioning. So that has to be an emergency response plan that covers all those possibilities. And town feedback is incorporated into the emergency response plan. Fire system testing, critical life safety systems, functional tests, witnessed by fire officials prior to commissioning and the town's third-party fire safety consultant. So we want to be on site as these things are installed, much like the building department comes in and does inspections. When a house is being built, we want to be inside at different phases, making sure that we're witnessing that things are meeting the standard of the NFPA. Exhaust system performance demonstration, we'd like to be available for that too. Fire code and standards, compliance with national, state, and fire codes, and that includes, most importantly, the NFPA 855 standards, the UL 9540 standards, and 9540A standards. And so NFPA standards are all the standards for a battery energy storage facility and the requirements that they have. The UL standards, the UL 9540 standards, are specific to one of these is for large-scale fire testing to make sure that the technology that they're using has been tested and has been certified to pass that test in a large-scale fire demonstration. And then the other portion of the UL 9540 is basically that certified that it meets all the standards of that technology. So all battery test results will be provided to the town. Water supply, dedicated fire water, a minimum of 30,000 gallons or 75% percent monitored minimum refillable from municipal supply, unless an adequate fire protection and hydrant capacity is provided on site. So they have to, in any instance, they have to be able to provide that level of fire protection on site. large-scale fire test, battery technology, and layout validity validated by large-scale fire tests, as I said, 9540A. Site access and command, multiple entry points. The town is requiring multiple entry points, 20 feet fire access road, encircling the best facility, and supporting 75,000-pound apparatus. And we also want an incident command post, referred to as an ICP, is a minimum of 100 feet from the enclosure upwind with a second fire alarm annunciator. And what we're requiring there is sometimes a facility will have that command ICP in the middle of the facility, which is not a great thing if there's an incident going on there. You want it at the edge of the facility so you can pull up and be 100 feet away from that facility and immediately see what's going on in that fire, what chemical levels are and what's happening, what's working, what's not working. So that's one of the things that we've required. Alarm and notification systems, fire alarm, Class A loop, backup power monitored at UL listed central station. Immediate notifications of Tewksbury Fire Department, official representation on site within 2 hours of the emergency, documentation, full NFPA 855 compliance set, construction documents, manuals. This is a lot of the things that are in the appendix as well. Commissioning and decommissioning plans, emergency response plans, hazard mitigation analysis, fire risk, plume analysis, MSDS equipment certifications, detection, emergency power, critical safety, systems interconnection, fire testing, and compliance modeling. So all of these things are elements that are required under NFPA 855. We've called them out both in the document and in our appendix to make sure that they are complied with. Property value protection, as I went through that when I went through the table, it talked about the $50,000 for properties that are within 650 feet of the project for any proven material reduction value. So just for your own edification, that covers basically everything north of, the street is that right up, is it north of, I forget the name of the street, but the house is in front of the industrial park. But it also covers the three abutting clusters of condominium units in the Hillman facility, which you can see in this picture here. So they would be eligible for that program. So the reserve fund would remain active for 5 years after commercial operation or until timely claims are resolved. Construction and operation management. A comprehensive construction management plan will be prepared and shared with the town, outlining all phases of work and measures for minimizing disruption. Any significant delays or changes, including those exceeding 3 months, will be promptly communicated to the town. So noise and visual impacts will be mitigated through landscaping, sound barriers, appropriate work hours restrictions, and also adhering to the Tewksbury general bylaw. Traffic management strategies will be implemented to minimize congestion and ensure safety during construction, including coordination with Public Works and police. The project is committed to restoring any impacted public roads or infrastructure to pre-construction condition or better, so we're requiring that they do that. Strict adherence to health and safety standards will be maintained throughout the construction and operations with on-site contact for emergencies. During operation, the facility will maintain regular inspections and compliance with all local, state, and federal regulations. Hillman Energy Center will prioritize hiring local union, labor, and vendors whenever feasible, providing economic benefits to the community. And then decommissioning and insurance. Decommissioning is an essential aspect of the project life cycle and to ensure long-term community protection. So Hillman is required to secure a decommissioning bond or a financial guarantee valued between $3 million and $6 million, ensuring that there are sufficient funds to safely dismantle and remove the battery energy storage system at the end of its operational life. The decommissioning plan will include detailed steps for equipment removal, site remediation, restoration to pre-project conditions, or as specified by the town, according to the best industry practices and all applicable laws. The town will provide the decommissioning plan in connection with permitting or approval of the project. Environmental safeguards will be strictly followed during decommission to prevent adverse impacts. Adequate insurance includes liability and the umbrella coverage and will be maintained throughout the project term to protect the town and its residents for unforeseen risks or damages. The town will have the right to review and approve decommissioning plans and insurance certificates, ensuring continued community oversight. So the decommissioning could be the project, if it's never completed, they'd still have to cover the decommissioning. And if the project is abandoned at some point, they still have to cover decommissioning. So it's in all phases of possible decommissioning is covered through this agreement. And the insurance, obviously, is through the term of the project. Reporting and transparency. So transparency and communication are a core principle of the host community agreement. Hillman Energy Center will provide the town with detailed annual reports documenting all financial payments, community benefits and expenditures, and project milestones. Hillman will maintain a dedicated project website that will offer timely information about the construction progress, safety notices, emergency protocols, and contact information for project representatives. If that should change, they have to notify the town immediately. Hillman Energy Center shall at least once every 6 months or upon reasonable request of the town Tewksbury Select Board during pre-construction and construction activities, provide public reports to the Select Board describing its progress in obtaining necessary permits and the status of construction of the project and matters that may reasonably be expected to affect the town's interests, describing major issues which may have arisen and responding to questions from the town officials and the public. So at all times, we want them to be communicating with the town about the progress of the project and make sure that the Select Board is included in that process. And also that there is a public dissemination of information through social media so that the town can follow the progress as well. So that is the end of the presentation, Mr. Chairman. I have the experts here to answer questions, so if you want to start with the board, and it's your prerogative.
I spoke with the Chair of Board of Health, and she deferred to the Select Board, so I'm going to hand it over to, we're going to have the boards ask the questions. We're going to then allow residents to come up, and everyone's going to have a couple of minutes to speak and ask questions. We'll have the experts be able to answer questions. We do ask that everybody limit their time to 2 minutes because we got a lot of people here, and we want to get, if something does not get answered in time, we can submit additional questions to the town manager's office, and we'll do our best to get everybody the answers that they require. We have 2 clerks together, and when we get to that point, I'm going to ask them to, keep track of time so that, keep everything moving along. But at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Holland.
Sorry, point of clarification. So is the intended flow here to ask questions from the Select Board, then the Board of Health, then open it up for public comment? And then are we coming back for comments from the board, or are we just doing questions and comments? What's the?
We're going to open it up to the board to ask questions. You can ask the experts. You can ask those people. We'll open up to the residents, and we'll come back to the board. We'll close the public section, and then we'll have an additional comment section if need be.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Mr. Holland.
Yeah, this is a lot to digest in such a short period of time.
There you go.
Microphone. Again, it's a lot to digest in a short period of time. Okay.
Closer.
Okay. I do have a question for the expert. The alarm notification that's in the contract, does that go directly to the fire station as other commercial buildings?
Hi, this is Mike Nicholas with Hiller, retired captain and assistant fire marshal from Kern County Fire Department in California. The alarm signal from the fire alarm should go to a UL listed central station, which then communicates directly with the emergency dispatch center for the local first responders.
Okay, my next question is for the attorney, and that's, in the contract, it says 650 feet. Can we upgrade that to 1,000 feet?
I guess I would defer to the town manager. I mean, we started at a lower number and have negotiated to cover more people who might lodge claims. I think it would be difficult to get Hillman Energy to agree to a higher number. I don't know if the town manager wants to speak to that. I mean, we can always ask for things, but this was a compromise.
Yeah,
It doesn't limit anyone making a claim. It just provides us a separate pathway and a separate process. If people have other claims they want to make, they can make them in a court of law.
That's actually,
just for insight for that question. So we did start, it was a much lower radius, I think it was 300 feet, and then, we ended up negotiating it up to about 650 feet. In fact, that was just recently done in the last few days, so it was less.
okay, that's all I have for now, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to hear what other board members have to say.
Mr. Russo?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So a couple things. I mean, I think, we keep hearing from residents, meeting after meeting, public forums, social media in some regards. The concern is on safety, clearly. Mr. Curran, you talked a lot about various safety issues, et cetera, within your presentation. I guess from my perspective, I took some notes from the agreement before sort of preparing for this meeting. I mean, I just want to sort of walk through in layman's terms, plain terms, what happens in the first 15 minutes of, God forbid, some sort of incident, and who's notified? So can we just kind of take it from that? And again, I know Mike Nichols is on the line. Certainly, obviously, he can chime in. I think residents sort of need to understand that and just hear sort of some of the basic things. We're talking about a lot of precautions and a lot of things that are being put in place, which is excellent. And in those regards, those are safety precautions. God forbid there is some sort of incident. What happens when that occurs? I think that's what residents want to hear.
So I would defer, I'd ask Mike Nichols to comment on especially the beginning part of that, about, the notification through the systems that happen, and how that transpires, and at what point, I think you mentioned it a little bit a minute ago, but what point the fire department is notified, and what would typically happen in an incident like this, Mike, in terms of they pull up, they're going to go to the ICP, I would imagine, and then they're going to make some determinations on how they respond based on what they see. But I would defer to you.
Yeah, that's correct. So essentially, the response starts when the call comes in, and even before the call comes in. So the project site should be identified as a target hazard in their computer automated dispatch. So that if an alarm comes in from site, from the fire alarm panel, goes to the UL Central Station, they connect and contact the emergency dispatch center. Fire department begins the dispatch. They show up on scene. There should be a first responder station or incident command post that they can go to at a safe distance from the site, and they are able to see optics of what's going on that fire alarm panel. Do I see a smoke detector activation? Do I see a gas detector activation? Do I see that the louvers have opened up on the exhaust system, and do I see that the exhaust fan has opened up? All of those things tell us as first responders different things about the incident. I may have smoke detectors going off and no gas, and my assumption at that point is that I have probably an electrical fire. If I have gas detection showing up, I'm starting to think of some sort of thermal event involving a battery. At that point, there should be some sort of emergency contact information at the front gate. They can reach out to site representatives. The site should also be made aware of this through their remote operating center, that there is an incident that's happening at their site. They should be making every effort to get people available to be able to be contacted by the first responders that know the site and that can be able to clarify what the technology is that's involved, what the diagnostics are in the actual enclosure itself, because the fire alarm panel is not going to monitor all of the battery temperatures and state of charge, voltage, any of that stuff. They're looking at simply the initiation devices of gas, smoke, and heat detectors and exhaust fan activation and louvers opening up. Once they make contact with the subject matter expert through the site representative, then they're able to start making a determination of what the adjacent enclosures are doing. How are they being impacted, if at all? Large-scale fire testing in the industry is predicated on showing that a fire in one enclosure will not propagate to an adjacent exposure at the distance that this test is set up. That informs siting on the actual battery project site in terms of distances between enclosures. As a first responder, you have a level of assurance that you're showing up to a single enclosure now and not multiple enclosures involved. At that point, you're going to be monitoring the adjacent enclosures to make sure that they're not heating up in a capacity that would require some level of intervention, like doing some intermittent cooling and spraying of water between the enclosures. And at that point, you're simply managing the incident. You want the enclosure that's involved to consume itself in the fire. It actually burns off the stranded energy, and it's a shorter duration incident. So I know that was like drinking from the fire hose, so I apologize for the speed of that, but that is about your first 15 minutes.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. There's been some questions brought up in the past as well about runoffs and wetlands and water. As far as, containment, cleanup plan, I guess sort of how do we as a town sort of ensure that that's happening, and how do we verify that sort of post any type of incident that might occur?
Typically, we've seen a lot of incidents here in California recently, and they've had air monitoring and water quality monitoring during and post-incident. And universally, we have seen no negative impact off-site for the air and the water. And especially with water used in the capacity, if not in an attempt to extinguish it, but in cooling, the water shouldn't be touching any batteries or the actual enclosure that is involved, and as a result will have negligible amounts of any sort of contaminants other than is in the water naturally occurring. Then you look at some sort of stormwater containment on site to be able to handle any water that might be coming off in an operation like that. And so, it can be a situation where your first responders, we're really relying on the first responders to make day of decisions with day of data, using gas detectors on their frontline equipment for gas meters to be able to make a determination at what distance it is safe to be able to stage incoming equipment, to set up an exclusion zone, and to be able to manage the incident.
Okay. And then my last question, it's a fully loaded question here, Mike, so I apologize for putting you on the spot. I'm presuming that you've read our draft host community agreement and the other documents that support it. Is there anything from your professional opinion that gives you cause for concern, or things that we should be thinking about that maybe we're not thinking about, or anything maybe that gives you cause to step back for a moment and think?
Sure, and I appreciate the candidness of the question. And just for some context, I started in the battery storage industry regulating these as a fire marshal in 2019 and 2020. And our jurisdiction was the first one to put out a comprehensive submission guideline package, which is now at 32 pages. Made it a public document available for people to utilize across the state and country. And in using that as a template in reviewing your HCA, with the overarching consideration of compliance to NFPA, especially the most recent version of NFPA 55, you're really capturing a lot of the lessons learned from Kern County and our early years of kind of wrestling with this. Today's world of permitting and deployment of these batteries is a drastically different world than we saw 5 to 6 years ago, with drastic improvement in life safety considerations, technology. So, to answer your question more clearly, your HCA is covering you guys very well with the request for adherence to NFPA 55, the most recent edition. That is a storehouse of all of the best industry practices up to this point, and I would feel confident with an HCA to address that and utilize that as your litmus test.
Okay. I appreciate your time, Mike. Thank you.
Mr. Mackey?
Thank you. So I've been discussing this with Mr. Curran and staff at least bi-weekly since he came on board. So I don't have a lot of questions, but there are two things that I think deserve clarity, a little more detail for the residents, because, again, I think we have very good terms in this HCA. It's the one lever we can really pull as the town. So one of the big wins that I want to highlight more that you did mention in your overview, but that fund for property value impacts, because through the discussions I've had with a lot of residents, that's a primary concern, is this goes in and my property value is going to plummet. So I know that this was a difficult item to negotiate, but it is a big win, and I'd like if we could give a little bit more explanation on what that is, how it works, because I think that is something that people deserve to understand.
Okay. So just backing up a little bit, like you said, traditionally what we saw in some of these other agreements was the radius of the affected area was much smaller, and so they were a little bit more, I guess, less conservative about setting up the funds because they felt like there was less exposure because it was 300 feet. We wanted to expand that because we wanted to include Emerald Court. And to get to Emerald Court, you had to get to 600 feet. And then we were able to get them to go to 650 square feet in order to capture all of the abutting properties on the edge of that property line. Because we thought that those properties were the most likely to be impacted if they are in fact impacted. So then what we did was, in an effort to, the exposure obviously was their biggest concern, so came up with a plan where they basically set up a fund of $50,000 and just keep replenishing it as the claims came in. And we would be the custodian of that fund, not Hillman. So we would control the money, and then what would happen is that, as I said earlier, there would be 3 independent assessors that a person could choose one of those assessors, and then what would happen is they would pay half the cost of that assessor, and Hillman would pay the other half of the cost of that assessor. If it turned out that they were entitled to a refund or compensation, then Hillman would then pay the rest of what they paid for that assessment. And it would come out of that fund, and that program would stay in place for 5 years, to see, because we figure that the market will stabilize after that point. So if there's any impact, it would be at the front end, and this at least provides a vehicle where people can, if they feel like they've been impacted, they have somewhere to go rather than, as Jeff Bernstein mentioned, the other place you can do is go to court. But this is a little bit less onerous because, they're just picking in an independent assessor. They're going to make that assessment, and determination is going to be made. In worst case scenario, they're out half the value of that assessment. Best case scenario, they get some type of some compensation.
Thank you. Yeah, residents never want to hear, go to court. That's never the answer we want. So that $50,000, just to clarify, so that $50,000 gets replenished, right? Because if it's $25,000 per property that's impacted by this, so each property would be eligible for up to $25,000 if this site impacts your property value. So it's not $50,000 pool that gets replenished. Now, again, I know that's not the number everyone wants to hear, but it's significant. This was a hard-fought item that if something happened, if this does impact your property value, you have an angle. Again, you can go beyond that to court, but it's something. It is, we fought very hard for this, and I think this is a big win, and I wanted to make sure people understood that it was at least considered, and we moved the needle as much as we could on that. Is it what we want for a number? No. But you do have additional methods to seek redress if needed, which unfortunately is going to court. This gives you some cover if that were to happen. So,
And just as one additional piece of information, one of the attachments on this document is a list of those properties so that there's no confusion about which properties are eligible. And we did redact the names and the addresses, but you can see the parcel numbers so that if you want to find out, you can find out, or you can call us, we'll tell you. But I just didn't think it was appropriate to put that information out on the public forum.
absolutely. That's all I have. Thank you.
Right. I'm not sure if Mr. Ryder is available. Mr. Ryder?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up on, a couple questions from my colleagues. Just to follow up on the response time. This is being monitored through Hillman. What is the type of monitoring is being done at their facility? Is it a 24-hour facility? And what type of individuals do they have on call for the monitoring in, say, the off shifts?
Mike, you still there?
Yes, sir. Yeah, the monitoring is going to be conducted 24/7 at a dedicated UL-listed central station for fire alarm monitoring purposes. As far as the site and their response time for personnel, I don't have that information. We're not representing the client. We're representing the town.
Sure. Just from, and that's something that we can work out in the later agreements. Just wanted to understand the overall concept on the monitoring. Also, I've been, speaking closely with Mr. Curran and staff on this on a regular basis. I agree that with Mr. Mackey that this is the number that we're getting on the property value is not what we wanted, but there is a start here. Following that to Mr. Curran and maybe through the attorney, has in the other communities that were referenced earlier, have you seen any property values in reduction?
I have not seen any. I'm not aware of any out of the 2 or 3 in town and in the state. I have not seen any anyone that's used this mechanism in the HCA's successfully.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. And then lastly, again, I want to finish here with the rest of the Select Board and Board of Health has to say. I'm happy to hear about the training and the ability that Tewksbury Fire will be trained properly and provided with the proper gear for any response that may occur. And I know Chief Kearns has worked a lot of hours on this, and want to thank him and his staff on this as well. But I think those are critical points that residents had raised, and I think those were all captured in the HDA. So again, thank you very much for that, and I will. I may have some questions later, but I'd like to hear what other board members have to say. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. First, I would like to let the residents know our frustration. This thing has been exhausting. It's something that the residents aren't used to. It's not something that we're used to as a board. We like to have the residents come in front of us, ask us questions, and we can give you direct answers. And we can, because we're issuing the permit. That's not happening here. That's frustrating. We have the state siding board who's going to be issuing this permit if it gets issued. And for us to be to be able to negotiate these things and to take your health and safety into consideration, we have to stay neutral so that we can go in and we can fight for these type of things and make sure all the health and safety protocols are put in place. I would love to see every one of you up at the State House during the siting meeting when they're going to be making this decision, because I think it would make a difference of what goes on. We have our own town meeting, and that's the way we do things. Residents come in, they tell you what they want in their town. Unfortunately, the state overrules us on a number of things, and they have a siting board, and they're going to be the ones who are going to be issuing, if anybody's going to be issuing a permit. I'd like to see another way that we had more say as a community, and we could put more effort in so that we could say, this is something we want in our community, of what it is. And because if you go and you say, we don't want it, they immediately turn you off and say they're not working with us. And so then all the decisions go over to the state. We don't want that to happen. We want to make sure your voices are heard. We want to make sure that all of you have a chance to get up there and speak. And I appreciate everyone who's come to every one of our meetings. I appreciate everyone who's come to the Board of Health meetings. Appreciate the Board of Health for bringing all the concerns and all the questions forward so that we can put them in this. And I want to make sure that the residents continue to contact us and let us know concerns so that we can implement anything that we can possibly can into this health and safety agreement that we can put in there. It's not something, like I said, that we're used to when these things go through. I do see the fire chief in the background. Chief, I don't know if you had a chance to go through it, but is there any other comments or concerns you would like to? I want to make sure that you're going to be the first responders. If you would like to make a few comments about, your concerns with this health and safety agreement.
The main thing, Mr. Chairman, is the third-party consultant that we have. As I've said to the Board of Health when I was here before, I'm a fire chief. When I was in front of the Board of Health before, I'm a fire chief. I deal with a lot of things, but I'm not an expert when it comes to this. So we rely on their expertise explaining if the proper safety measures are being met. In the meetings I've had with them, 855, as Mike said, has changed a lot in the past 5 years to ensure the safety, to ensure that 9540 testing is being done, to ensure that we have a third party that can come in and actually analyze their test results. So when the company gives us their test results, we're going to have a third party overlook those test results to make sure they're where they should be. So, it's a difficult situation, as you said. We're not the permitting, but what we do have is we as a fire department will issue a permit. And if they don't meet everything that we have listed, they will not get the permit from us. So that's pretty much, it. I mean, I understand the safety issues. I've looked at a lot of data, and Mike said it, real-time data from fires. I've spoken to people like Mike and other experts that have been on the scene of some of these events. And the data they're getting is it's not reaching the threshold of, what, if you put it in a computer and you ask Google what it says, it could do this. But the fact is, real fire data is not showing those numbers. So my biggest thing is having the third-party expert that we can rely on as a fire department, right up through the construction and commissioning, to ensure that everything they're putting in there is met to those high standards.
Thank you, Chief. I really appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would just like to say, too, that the chief represents himself as not an expert in the area. I have to tell you how impressed I have been with the fire department and the chief staff, the Deputy Gudaro and Chief Kearns and the rest of his staff. They've got themselves educated on this technology. they're very impressive. They are professionals of the highest degree, and Tewksbury is very lucky to have them, protecting the town and protecting their interests in this project, because they've done a great job.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Chief. All right, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to the Chair of the Board of Health.
Thank you. So I'll turn it to the members if you want to start.
I have one question, and I'm not quite sure who to ask this to. In March or April, there's going to be a revision of the 9540A, and it's going to be to the existing 5th edition. When this is updated, will Hillman Energy be grandfathered into the old regulations, or will they have to abide by the new regulations?
I will defer to either Jeff or Mike on that one. They know the answer to that one.
So when we see construction permits that are pulled, so right now this is a land use approval process essentially. Construction permits are sometimes, 6, 12, 18 months out from the time that land use is approved. They have to go through and actually procure equipment. So in my personal opinion, I feel like by the time they actually pull construction permits, the revision to 9540A for the 6th edition will be out, and they will be held to comply to that.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Chris?
Not at this time, no.
Pam?
Do I understand that we might have time after, am I correct in that?
Yes, yeah. Okay.
George?
Yeah, I just have a few comments on probably one question at the end. Obviously, my concerns are containment, probably the biggest, groundwater, wastewater. Another one's a tax on the power grid. If you haven't read in the last 4 or 5 years, mostly down the south, but substations and things like that. I mean, it's going to be another place some person can think about just causing havoc there. But I can't get away from the fact of monitoring that there just can't be a person on site 24/7. I mean, I'm really not in the business, so I don't know how much it would cost, but my figures I added together, if somebody was there 24/7, it would be probably 400,000, maybe to 500,000. And something like the 2003 Northeast blackout, I mean, there's not gonna be enough power to have, you can work for it. For your house, you can have another power thing if the power goes off. Generator. There's gotta be no generators that can cause this thing to go. But let's just say something happens during the time, you have a power outage, and I don't know about anyone else in here, but in South Tewksbury, in 2025, the telephone companies can still not get us phone service all the time. So I can't get away from the fact that there should be somebody on site. Now, I know that it can be a negotiation tactic, part of that, and that's what I was told the town manager, I'm most concerned about. Last thing, and you can't answer this, but I see a war in our country on the energy, what kind of energy is going to be the most going forward, the biggest, and the most profitable. I just want to know, like, 30 years from now, is electricity going to be the thing, or is it going to be small nuclear substations, which I think are way better, even though it sounds, when you hear the word nuclear, because just in the next 5 years, our cost is going to be outrageous for electricity. That's my comment.
Okay, so I do have a couple of questions. So it was mentioned the water supply plans of 30,000 gallons. I believe from what I've seen and heard, that it is 1.5 million gallons a day for a thermal runaway. So where is the difference of the 30,000 to the 1.5 million gallons?
So industry-wide water has become, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Archie.
Industry-wide, water has become not the extinguishing agent of preference, because you really can't get water directly on the seat of the fire. You've got the enclosure, you've got the racks, you've got the modules, and then you've got batteries inside of them. So pouring tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of gallons of water on these incidents aren't really actually shortening the duration of the incident. They are exacerbating the problem. Some of the big incidents of reference recently have been in buildings, and we haven't had really the luxury of just saying, we're going to let a single enclosure with a very finite fire area consume itself, because these have been inside buildings. And so the industry has pivoted away from indoor deployment and more towards an outdoor containerized siting. And so then you're looking at a very finite fire area of one of these enclosures going up, with the intent of not trying to put water on it to extinguish it, but to actually let it consume itself, knowing that it won't propagate beyond the enclosure of origin because of the large-scale fire testing. And as a result, in NFPA 855, it references NFPA 1142, saying that 250 gallons a minute for 2 hours is the water supply, which comes out to 30,000 gallons, because it'll be short, intermittent bursts with a narrow fog pattern between enclosures, trying to absorb heat, not so much for extinguishment purposes.
Okay. Thank you. Now, from my understanding, the Hillman Energy Center is required to secure the decommissioning bond for a value between $3 million and $6 million. That's a 100% difference. So who decides how much, and how is that decided?
So that was negotiated, and it was, we just wanted to make sure that the floor was no less than 3 million, and of course, they wanted a ceiling, and the ceiling is 6 million. So we think the value of that decommissioning is going to fall somewhere in between those two numbers, but there's basically an agreement that between the two parties that it shouldn't exceed 6 million, but it should not be less than 3 million.
And who decides how much?
The two parties.
What was that?
The two parties.
So both? Okay. And how is that decided? Through public?
Negotiation.
Just negotiation?
Yeah.
Okay.
But based on what we think the value of that might be, and, it's a little back and forth between the two parties.
Okay. And then in the $25,000 real estate fund, is that contingent upon the property owner accepting as an exclusive remedy, or they have to waive judicial relief? So basically, so if they accept the $25,000, then it forces people to waive their rights to continue on to get more, to go to court?
There's no provision in there.
I'll answer that.
Yeah.
No, I mean, this is just an additional remedy, and it's meant to be an expedited process, but to answer the question, any other remedy that a homeowner, property owner wants to assert is still available.
Okay. And then the fire expert, I believe he mentioned the response starts before the call comes in. So I'm just wondering, how can the response start before you're notified?
So essentially that's through the site training, for area familiarization, the identification in your computer automated dispatch that this is a target hazard. So it's the preparation ahead of the actual call itself. It's the mock drills that will be taking place with the first responders at site. And so that would be kind of the idea. It's a phrase that we have in the fire service, that area familiarization, target hazard identification is really preparing for an incident prior to it occurring.
So you're talking about more of the prep, not necessarily if something were to occur that someone would respond before the call. It's because there's no way to know there's a problem. Is that correct?
Correct. This would be about training ahead of time. This would be about identifying the hazards in your first-hand jurisdiction or response area and having adequate identification that you're going not just to an electrical utility, but you're going to a battery storage site.
Okay. Also, as far as the property values, I don't know about all of that. There's been a lot of hearsay. I tried to look up the differences, but if there hasn't been any issues with the property values with all of these BESS facilities, then why would there, and I understand the negotiation and it's been hard, but like, why would they have any issues with negotiating 1,000 feet if they don't believe that there's any issues with property value diminution?
I can respond to that. I think it's a theoretical possibility, and they have to plan financially for a worst case. And so I'm not going to obviously completely speak for them, but I think what we've heard is if you go to a significantly higher radius, they have to project that, and they have to be prepared financially to respond to whatever number of property owners could assert a claim. And while they may believe that the likelihood of a claim being made and a diminution in property value is low, they still have to plan for it, and that carries a liability and a cost to them in their financing of the project. That's the balancing.
Thank you. I have a lot of questions. I was taking a lot of notes and writing them down while everyone was presenting. So one of the things that I saw and I recognized with the whole presentation is that the Board of Health isn't on any of this. And again, I get the whole financial stuff, but there's $270,000 for the other departments in town, and there's zero budgeted for the Board of Health. Why?
The Board of Health is part of the town, so this is money that's budgeted for the town, and in theory, we should all be swimming in the same direction. And so if there is something that the Board of Health wants to investigate or have, access to these experts, reach out to me and we'll see if that's a possibility. Yeah, I mean, this document is written for the town, and we're all members of the town, and it's not an exclusion of the Board of Health.
Unless we don't go with what the town wants, or unless it's something that is different in our opinion with the town, is that correct?
What's correct is that the town will not fund two attorneys that have two opposing positions.
So they're paying $250K and not paying any legal. Board of Health doesn't get anything for the peer review funding, building. So the Board of Health basically, yes, it's part of the town, but only if we don't ask questions.
So
And this is, and I know we had this conversation where you had mentioned about beating you over the head, and it's not about beating you over the head. It's just questions that I have because it doesn't make sense to me that, yes, we're part of the town with conditions. Because one of the things that was stipulated was when we put in that comment regarding our last vote, which was we assented with the town under conditions, that was stated that it was opposing the town, which we were not opposing the town. We weren't opposing either side. We were listening to both, and because of that, it's stated that we are being opposed to this, to everything that is being situated, so we get shafted from any type of funding. We have some, and I understand it's questions go through you, but when we need something ASAP or when we need something written and it's not to the point of what is decided or what is needed or what you want or in the same quadrant, the same idea, then we don't get anything.
So I'd like to respond, I'm not going to respond to everything you said, but.
That's fine.
But the context is that unfortunately, the Board of Health does not have any jurisdiction over this issue. And can I finish, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
So
Please let
what
him
we're
finish,
trying to,
please.
what we're trying to accomplish here is to make sure that the process is transparent and include the Board of Health in that process.
Please, let him speak, please.
The peer review money is for entities within the town that ultimately will have jurisdiction, and a lot of that comes later in the process, after, if this is permitted. Things like the building department or the fire department or conservation, if it goes through conservation, they will need peer review monies. And if, for example, if there's, I don't know if it'll happen this way, but if there's some noise study that needs to be done and the Board of Health wants to comment, then sure, we'll look at peer review for that. And I'm sure that the Board of Health will be interested in that. So to say that you blanketly not going to be allowed to do any of this is not true. But ultimately, this money is for the entities that have jurisdictional authority over this process. And so your statement is not accurate.
Well, it's not very clear in there when it's stating that the senior center receives money, that the building receives money, but yet Board of Health is not mentioned at all. And then, yes, if the peer reviewed part, it's okay, but I want to make sure, and I want it to be clarified in there, that that is part of what is happening. Like, we were told that we could not have a lawyer, that Mr. Bernstein did not represent us. Those were his words in writing. He does not represent the Board of Health. He represents the town manager and the select board. Those were the exact words in writing. And anybody can ask for it because it's public record.
Well,
and that was stated.
That's a correct statement.
You have access to town council.
What?
That's a correct statement.
Madam Chair, point of personal preference, if I may.
Yes.
I understand that the town manager has been the focal point for this, but that needs to come to us too.
Correct.
Right? The select board.
Thank you.
I wish the chair would kind of step in and protect our town manager, because he's taken all this flack for decisions this board has made. So we can't have it both ways. And while there is some validity to certain points Madam Chair is making, we can't allow, I don't believe we as a board should be allowing our town manager to take all the flack.
Thank you, Jim.
To the chair. I think that's why it's so important in November who you vote for governor. Because governor needs to get rid
I
of
don't think that's appropriate here.
and give the power back.
George. So where does that leave us?
Can I
I think I've answered that question, Mr. Chairman.
So we've always had an open relationship in this community. If any board or any member on any board, I said, we've always had an open communication in this community. If any board member, if any chair of any committee has ever come forward and said, I need assistance and I want you to come and sit down with the town manager and have a discussion, and we feel like we're not getting the answers that we need, then I would gladly sit down with them. I did sit down, and I mentioned that to our chair. At any time, any place that you feel that you're not being heard, you're more than welcome to contact me, and we will sit down and we'll go over every one of your concerns. We have attorneys, and I explained to them, if I have legal questions, I don't contact, I'm the chair of the Board of Selectmen. I don't send it directly to our legal counsel. I send it to our town manager, sends it to our legal counsel, because we don't want the residents of Tewksbury to have hundreds of thousands of dollars if every board and every section could just send in questions randomly without going through one authority. We want to know what we're paying for. We want to make sure that people aren't asking the same questions. So if we had numerous board members all asking the same question, all going through the things, our legal costs would get astronomical. So what we've always had is an open dialogue that if a board member it feels like they're not getting heard, they can always go to the chair of the Board of Selectmen. I've never said no ever, to anybody coming in front of me and asking to sit down and go and talk to the town manager and get the answers that they needed.
So if we need assistance in writing something that does not go with what you're stating, but we need legal guidance, not necessarily representation, legal guidance, are you stating that you will assist with that?
We have done that already with you. Town council has reviewed
just don't like
documents you've
it, Melissa.
submitted.
To be fair, let's be honest, Melissa, you just don't like what you're hearing.
No, it's not that. No,
that's exactly what it
excuse
sounds
me.
like.
No, we're not going to do that because it's not that I don't like what I hear. It's that when we had to petition to intervene, that took a long time, number one. Number two, and then Kevin Feely, our town council, not the special, was the one that did that. There's been a lot. And Shannon can also verify that there's been a lot of wait and non-responsiveness, and, we are stuck in a time where it's a timely thing. We, like everyone else, there's a lot of time. And so waiting for a response, a lot of times we don't have that. And so we are doing this basically on our own.
Sure.
And I get that, and you don't like that answer either. It's the same thing. It goes both ways. I might not like what you're telling me, but you also don't like what I'm trying to say, which is there is all these things, but yet the Board of Health isn't mentioned. And then it's stated, oh, yes, fine, when, if it's needed, we'll help you. But it's only under conditions. And I get that because it's under the town. But the thing is that this is, and it's getting old, that we should have been working together from the beginning.
Where is the select board mentioned in this? It's not, because none of us are jurisdicting and governing this process. That's my point. That is the point that Mr. Curran is trying to make. None of us are governing this position. None of us are deciding this. The only piece that we are trying to do is trying to protect and trying to provide safety precautions and all the things that everybody in this room is probably going to be mentioning over the next hour to hour and a half. That is all we can do at this point. And at the end of the day, and to Mr. Crabman's point, we are in a position of negotiation. So the moment we start taking a position one way or the other, we lose any leverage for anybody that has ever negotiated any contract of any sort, of any kind. So I hear you. I understand what you're saying. I don't agree with it, but I understand the sort of strife and the frustration, I guess, maybe at this point, because at this point I don't know what else to do, because I feel the same way, but we're coming at it from two different directions.
Yeah, I'm coming from health and safety and questions and asking
That's exactly
questions.
what I just said.
That's where
exactly
we're
what I
coming from, is we're asking questions.
The first question I asked was, what happens when, God forbid, something happens? What happens in the first 15 minutes? Please tell me that. And I think our expert answered it very intelligently and very sophisticatedly. That was my first question. So I'm coming at it from the same approach, Melissa. We're just coming at it from two different angles. That's all.
I understand the frustration, and I'm listening to everyone across this board, but we're one town, and we're supposed to be working together.
Correct.
And we're supposed to, so that's to my point. I've never had a board, anybody, I've been doing this for 12 years in the community. I've never had a school committee member, Board of Health member, planning board member, anybody come in front of me and say, I'm not getting the answers that I need. Can you assist me? And I said, no. That's what we're here for. That's what we're supposed to work together as a team. We're supposed to get the answers. We hire lawyers for it. We don't hire opposing lawyers to argue with each other. You know, if there's something that the lawyer isn't giving you the correct answer, then we can have a conversation about, we don't believe this lawyer's treating us right, but we didn't even get to that. We should have a conversation. In the future, if there's questions or concerns, we need to work together. So you're talking about having, you didn't get answers. You can contact us. If you don't believe you're getting the correct answers, we're elected by the residents. The town manager works for us. So at that point, you can come to the select board and say, I feel, as the chair of the Board of Health, that I'm not getting the answers or I'm not getting the activity that I deserve, and I'd like to work with you to get those. That didn't happen.
I will do that going forward. And so can we just clarify that then the Board of Health is part of that 250 that's in there?
It depends on what it is, but yes. Yeah.
Depends on what it is.
Yeah.
Did
Can
you
you-
not just hear what he said?
I did.
Yeah.
Depends on what it is. So,
No, before that.
yes, I did. And I'm
Point
just-
of order, it's Madam Chair's time.
thank you. I appreciate
I
that.
just wish you were listening.
I am listening.
Okay.
I just want it to be repeated so that I understand it and make sure that I understood it correctly.
Okay. Go for it.
Thank you. This is terrible that it's, you say you want to work together, but yet you're confronting me when I'm asking a simple question. And and you're accusing me for not listening when I'm just trying to clarify and make sure that for the record, it is clear. So yes, and you mentioned depending on what it is, meaning, so if we want peer-reviewed studies for this, that would be part of it. Is that correct?
Again, that's a very hypothetical. You're leaving out all the details of what that situation is. When that comes up, we'll
So it's
deal with
basically determined on what you think is appropriate.
it. Well, if it's appropriate to this project and in the town's position on the project.
And I'm not trying to interrupt you, but once again, there's where we go in. The town manager works for us. If there's questions or concerns, we're the elected officials. We should be working together. If you feel that something is not being heard, we'll go in there together and we'll argue that point together as the elected officials for this community and work together to get the answers. So if you believe you're not being heard, please contact me and we'll make sure that your voice is heard. And I do ask that we allow each other to talk and not go back and forth with for the rest of this meeting. I would like everyone to be professional, work together. We're here to make sure that the residents in this community are safe and secure and to get the answers that they're asking for. This is not solving anything going back and forth, pointing fingers or arguing. We're here to work together. We're supposed to be working together.
I don't
So-
think a single resident in this room is buying the lip service anymore. You can't have it both ways. You can't speak out of both sides of your mouth. You can't give multiple stories. It can't change with every comment.
Chair, we'd like to have you finish your comments.
That's it. This is very frustrating, but I appreciate you clarifying that for me and having that on record that it would be dependent on what it is. So thank you. I have nothing more.
Okay. At this time, we're going to open it up to residents. We ask everybody to please limit your, we have a lot of people that are going to be here who want to speak. So please limit your questions to a couple of minutes, please. And I'll ask clerks to keep charge of that. Thank you.
Hello, my name is William Martell, and I live at 1 Clinton Street. Most people don't know where that is, but I can show you. Right here. My house is only 40 feet from the battery site. There's going to be a 30-foot wall right outside my front door. There's going to be a constant buzzing sound 24/7, enough to drive you crazy. But my biggest fear is going to bed and never waking up. My house is in the danger zone. Some of these gases the meters can't even test for. If something goes wrong, I've been told an alert goes to Texas first, then after the fire department would be notified. How long would that take? How would I be notified? What are you going to do to assure my safety if this site goes in? And thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Dawn Shan, 100B Star Ave. I'm just leaving this one poster up for half a second because it's great that we have, 600 feet, maybe people can get $25,000 for their homes. You decimated that home value here. It is straight up in the danger zone, and that house is going to get $25,000, maybe, same as a house 650 feet away. Just thought maybe you'd factor that in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Obviously, a lot of people are upset tonight for good reason. A couple of things. We've heard that we haven't, it's hard that you've heard residents and come up and you've appreciated it week after week, and there's more that could have been done. Under open meeting law, if residents bring up a topic more than once or twice up here, it's supposed to be put on the agenda. Jerry, have you been here before? A couple of times? Yeah, me and my bestie Jerry, we've been here once or twice. Now it's put on the agenda, and I don't know what this meeting is, but it feels like I'm watching the one woman in town who's sticking up for us be bullied by a bunch of men. Everyone can have their own opinions, but that's very unprofessional. Anyway, so there are different fire consulting companies out there that believe the 855 and all of the codes are the all end all of all of this. However, that is not always the case, and hydrogen fluoride is a gas that needs to be taken seriously. And we have paid out of our own pockets for third-party expert testing. You have said if we had data to bring it to you, it is now literally staring you right in the face. This hydrogen fluoride can go half a mile. This is very clearly broken down, and in the back it explains why a lot of times you will get the non-detectable limit on when they do the 9540A testing. That does not mean that it's not there. And that is the big problem. We paid for a expert chemical engineering companies, world-renowned. The problem is a lot of companies that are built by firefighters, they say, oh, the codes are what are going to protect you because after we've tested, after these fires, we haven't found any hydrogen fluoride. Consistently, they haven't tested for hydrogen fluoride. That's why they haven't found it. But also, hydrogen fluoride is the trickiest, most sneaky gas you can find. If it lands on glass, then it evaporates. If you hit it with water, so what if it's raining that day? It turns into hydrofluoric acid. So now you have literal acid rain, but still our firefighters are safe 100 feet away, according to ESRG. But this is the reality of what you guys are allowing into your town with a big red carpet. Thank you.
Mr. Pellegrini, I know this information was shared with our expert because it was brought in front of us, and so we did share it with our expert. Do we have a comment on that?
Mike, you still there?
Yes, sir, I'm still here.
I know you, I think
So when we look at any,
Go ahead.
can you hear me?
Yeah, yes.
Yes, when we look at any hydrogenated off-gassing or constituents that are coming off in smoke, the vapor density of those is such that any hydrogen is racing to the moon at about 45 miles an hour. And so in an outdoor environment with wind conditions, relative humidity, temperatures, when you do any plume analysis, the resulting analysis is only as good as your input values are. And anybody's going to tell you that they cannot have a consistent, approach to doing these dispersion modeling because you have so many different input values. And so these are things that are definitely still valuable and that we're looking at during your large-scale fire testing. So it isn't your 9540A only that we're looking at, it's also your large-scale fire testing. And we can only go off the data that we have day of. So there's always speculation, there's always going to be concern, and life safety is a real consideration. And hearts and minds are not going to be swayed by technical data alone. But the technical data speaks for itself. And consistently across the industry, we're seeing an absence of hydrogen fluoride being detected during the incident and after the incident of any significant distance from the actual involved enclosure.
I'm sorry, this isn't fair. This is something that's going to go to court and be argued. We have witnesses that are actually going to testify in court. Are any of these experts actually able to testify? Because they're all late filed witnesses. They can't testify. And it's not fair to have a fire safety company who we don't know their credentials go up against a chemical engineering company who has very, very different test methods. So we just need to make that clear here. We have test data for these specific batteries, not a generalization done by expert chemical engineers. I just need to keep that out there.
Point of clarification, since no rules for this joint meeting were disseminated prior to this meeting, how are we going to be handling resident questions? Is it going to be, going to engage?
No,
Or,
we're going to
may I
allow.
finish, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
Are we going to engage on each question, or are we going to cherry pick questions, or are the chairs going to decide together which questions will be addressed? Because it can't be a Wild West. There needs to be rules, there needs to be governance. So I would like clarification between the two chairs on how this will be addressed.
The clarification is there was a comment that this information was not submitted and we haven't reviewed it. I just want to make clarification to the residents that this has been submitted to us and we did share it with our expert. So I just wanted to make sure that.
They are court expert witnesses. Are they going to court?
Hold. So the intent is to cherry pick which questions we will engage in response on.
If somebody asks a question, that if we're listening to the residents, I'm going to respond. That's why we have an open meeting. If
So you're going
somebody has a question, yes. If somebody has a question, I'm going to respond to them. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, so we will be responding to questions. That's all I was looking for. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's why we're allowing. We said that at the beginning of the meeting.
Can you respond? Can someone respond to
Mr.
Dawn?
Chairman,
Sorry, can someone respond to Dawn's question? Because she asked a question, and if we're responding, I think we should respond. If we're going back and forth, then if that's the situation, then I think she should get an answer.
We have
So, Chairman Mark, are we at?
Hold on.
Sure.
Okay.
no. Are you?
So I think if we're going to do that, if we are going to go back and forth, then we should stipulate how many times we're going back and forth, because this can go all over the place. And I also feel that if it's going to go back and forth, then that question should be answered, and then we can stipulate what we're going to do going forward.
We can go forward. I say that we allow, what is your recommendation on this thing?
So my recommendation is, since we already started this, I think that that question should be answered because we started it. And then moving forward, I think that if there are questions, I think that they should be submitted and we should respond publicly in some way, shape, or form, so that everyone gets a response to their questions. However, because if we're doing here's the thing, I'm thinking, to make it easy, if there's a question, you go one question, that's it, and that's how we do it, or there's none at all, because the going back and forth is going to take way too much time. It's going to be a conversation versus, public hearing.
I have no problem with your recommendation that we allow them to do that, but I just want to make sure that as we're having this conversation, that we're also not, we've been told that we're not listening and that we don't respond in public meetings. And now we put something on public meeting, so I'm just trying to do our best to make sure that people are being heard and be able to respond to them. I want to make sure that people's questions, I understand we're trying to limit the time, but I also want to make sure that people's answers are responded to. We have an expert here, and we're trying to get those answers. But if going forward, we'll let them ask a question, and then we'll send them a written response if that's.
Can I ask you what your thought is?
I would recommend a 5-minute recess where the two chairs have a discussion and decide what the guidelines will be for engaging with residents, so we can have clearly defined. That way there, everyone knows what's going on, there's no questions, we don't have to keep coming back to this.
Thank you.
Are you in?
I'm good for that, yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll take a,
Real quick.
we'll take board members.
I don't think we need 5 minutes, but
I'm going to have to take a roll,
Oh.
make sure that our board members.
Yep.
I'll listen to, you want to make it as a recommendation to your board?
oh yeah, do I have a recommendation to just, quick, it doesn't need to be 5 minutes, let's just do a 2-minute break to get things situated.
I agree.
Okay.
All right, and is our board in favor of that?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, thank you. Okay, we're back in the session. I'm going to turn it over to the Chair of the Board of Health to describe what we discussed.
Thank you. So I think it's best that if you do have a question and one of the experts is able and willing to answer, they are more than welcome to answer that question. What we will not have is a rebuttal going back and forth. So, and then if you have any extra commentary that you would like to address with the answer that you received, you are more than welcome to submit that to both of the boards, and we will ensure that some type of answer, if possible, is given to you, even if it's a no response. Okay, so that something gets back to you so that you know that it was answered. During this question and answer, the board members will not be responding. The only one would be the town manager and the experts that would be responding to any of the questions. We will not be responding to anything. Okay? And we'll have the 2 minutes for that, and then if there's a question, we'll wait for that, and then we'll continue on.
Okay.
Sound good? Thank you.
Mr. Lombardo, I think you were at the microphone.
So I didn't have like many questions, but can I make comments? Is that okay? All right, so my name's John Lombardo. I live at 17 Buckingham Road in Tewksbury. I do serve on the board and committee, but I'm not speaking on behalf of either of those today, just a resident and leader in the community. And, I really want to touch on quickly my stance. I think it's kind of well known. I don't believe lithium battery sites belong anywhere near residential buildings, businesses, daycare centers, senior communities, schools. I think it's too much of a risk. And I have been advocating at the state level for home and health protections because I do believe there's weak oversight and protections coming from the state. And I do believe this is politically driven, and this is why it's making it really dangerous in this town. So at the municipal level, I have advocated for a emergency fund budget where any money generated from this project, the $2 million I think we're speaking of in this case, can be set aside for the homes, for the residents in case there is ever an emergency and people's homes and health is impacted. I would think that's the ethical and responsible thing to do. And the reason why I got so involved in this project versus many others that come and go in this town, because I do believe it touches on the heart of this community. I think it touches on the character of it. And I have seen glaring gaps on how we manage it at the municipal level and the dangers they can actually have at that municipality. I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong, do we have a process or basically a process for how we handle a high-risk project like this when it comes to the town currently? And you guys don't have to answer it right now, but I haven't found one. And I think this may be one of the problems that we have, is that we're bringing in something that is extremely dangerous. It has chemicals in it, and we don't have a formal process, a high bar process. And I think we're kind of utilizing what the state's giving us, the Clean Energy Act. And I have observed bias. I know that we're saying, and everybody's biased, right? We can all be biased. This isn't an attack. It's just an observation that when we don't have a process, and I'm hearing, well, we have to remain impartial. But then actions, though, speak louder than words at times. And the actions that people are seeing in this town are showing that you're on the other side. That's just the optics of it. And I will give that case, and I'll try to go briefly about it. And I'll start at the beginning of this whole project. At the very beginning is when you start having executive sessions behind closed doors. The Clean Energy Act does call for transparency. That was a choice the select board made. These could have been public, and they should have probably been public. It helps build that trust. So we shouldn't be shocked that you see a community right now who is doubting and doesn't have faith in some of our select board and our town manager, or whoever's involved in this. It's because that's what it creates. And then let's look at the fact that the Board of Health was never included right away. Now, it's not mandatory that they are, but it's ethically responsible. And the reasons for that are just because the Clean Energy Act in the state, this is politically driven, just because the state wants to walk off that cliff and they don't want to have ethical guidelines and they just want to streamline the permitting process, that's a pinnacle moment for this state to actually rise above that and say, just because you're unethical doesn't mean we're going to do it too. We're going to get the Board of Health included. We're going to have a gold standard process of dealing with this. So I feel like that was a miss. Okay, great. Now let's fast forward to how just...
We're giving everybody 2 minutes.
2 minutes, and I'll wrap it up.
It's my 2 minutes.
There we go, thank you. Okay. I'll wrap it up out of respect. So
I just want to let everybody have a chance to be heard, that's all.
So then we got to look about how the community members were treated. Now, I've heard people say that, the protests are going on in this town, the rubble razzers from out of town, that it's funded by organizations. I looked into it myself. It was not true. This is actually funded by a family behind me. And it's supported by not just the immediate community, but basically all of Tewksbury. Most people I've spoken to, they're out there, a lot of people out there protesting. And then I actually heard the fact that this family is funding their own money for chemical engineers to do research on the project, something the municipality should have been doing from the get-go. They shouldn't be paying for this. That's the frustration. That's our responsibility as a town. And then to hear that somebody, and I'm not going to pinpoint names, said that they're fearmongers. That's not how we speak to residents. These people here, I've seen people protest over apartment buildings and create a big ruckus about that, which is fine, do it. But don't turn your finger and call them fearmongers then. This is why I have been calling for an evacuation plan to begin with. There's too much politics and money and unethical things happening. But anyways, I want to wrap this up quickly. At the hosting agreement, we should have been, this is why I'm calling for all of the money to be going into an emergency fund budget until we get things figured out. It's not an attack on anybody. It's an opportunity for us to rise above where we're at and do the right thing and hold to the Tewksbury character. And this is one of the main reasons I decided to run for select board. Thank you.
Sir, name and address.
Yeah, my name is Alex Ashcraft. I live at 62 Washington Street. I'm considered an abutter and within 650 feet. I have a question for the expert witness on the fire control. How long is an estimated time of response to have boots on the ground, at least on site to start, as you said, I believe, have a line of sight at the situation to assess and determine a response?
Is this for the fire department or for me?
For you, in terms of your expertise on this, how long is an estimated amount of time for that immediate response?
For the first responders to arrive at scene?
Correct.
So typically you're going to see first responders, and depending on their own internal protocols, locally we have a 90-second response. We have to be out of the station in 90 seconds of getting the call. So depending on the distance of the station to the site, that's going to influence response times. I don't have that background to be able to give a definitive answer. Some of our responses in my jurisdiction are up to 20 minutes, 30 minutes from the first in station to actually make it to site, because it's an 8,200 square mile county.
Yeah, so that's understandable, and fortunately, this site is not too far located from our central fire station. However, how long will it take for the call to go to the central station controlled by the company? How long will that call then take to get to the first responders, and just an estimated time in that?
That should be a really immediate response. Fire alarm triggers, central station gets the notification, they immediately call dispatch. Dispatch then takes in the information, and they immediately set out the tones for the response. So it's a fairly condensed time frame of maybe 5-10 minutes at the most.
Okay.
Time of initiation to the time it's actually routed.
Okay, and then how long is it from boots on the ground for them to make an assessment as to a response, and specifically in terms of making a determination of any kind of evacuation protocols?
So that's going to be all dependent on data. They make an interface there at site at the incident command post to be able to make a determination what is active, what enclosures involved. They can get their first responders in their self-contained breathing apparatus, put on a 4-gas meter, and actually do an assessment and a walk of the area to pick up any sort of ticks on the 4-gas meter, at which time they set out an exclusion zone.
Okay, so safe to say that could be...
I thought,
We're not going to be going back and forth. That was the thing. So I just want to make it. And
all right, so my point is,
Yes.
I have a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old that have a yard that basically looks right onto this site. If there were to be a catastrophic event, how long before it's unsafe for them to be there versus how long will it be before we get a knock on the door saying we need to leave?
And I think that would be something that would be good to have in writing and responded to you or to the public as well. I think that would be very beneficial.
Yeah, I'm not the only one within this location.
Correct. So I think because we had decided not the back and forth, So if that answer can be responded by one of the experts or,
In all fairness, that question is so open-ended, there's no way you can answer that question without, it depends on a whole host of
I'd be happy to take the optimal time.
Well,
That's still probably too
depends on
much.
what's happening on the ground.
Well, sir, let's let him clarify it. We're asking him to
Yeah.
put it in writing, clarify your question,
Sure,
submit it to
I
us, and
appreciate
we'll try to
that.
get
Yes,
through it.
Correct.
I would love to know what an average response time would be for a regular situation.
and what I would recommend for you is to submit that question to both the Board of Health
Okay.
and the Select Board.
Yep.
To both of us, okay? And that way, it will get forwarded one way or another to whoever needs to respond with a request of response to you.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And if I may please interject, I know I've been in contact earlier advising a hard stop for me at 9 p.m. I do have a coworker also who's a fire protection engineer who is still available, but I wanted to ask if there was anything else that somebody needed directly from me that I could address that here in the next 10 minutes, please.
I think that would be more of, so if that's the case, because we're not, we're going by whoever goes up, I would submit those questions again to the Board of Health and to the Select Board so that we can then send them off to you, Mike, if that's okay, and then have a response from yourself if there's anything. Does that sound good?
Absolutely, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. No worries. Yeah, so any of the questions that are going to go to the fire expert, obviously you can put it on record here, but I would definitely recommend that you submit them. And I would give, like after this, I would say, today's Wednesday. By the end of this week, I would say, if you have anything, I'm sure a lot of you already have a lot of questions in mind. So I think by Friday afternoon so that we can get a response by the next week. Okay.
Hi, my name is Sandra Poole. I live at 64 Emerald Court. I have a question. I think I heard here tonight that the reason when Melissa came before the board and asked for legal representation, she was denied by the town manager and the select board. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct, and I think we've already answered this question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Added
She
tonight.
did not come before the Select Board. She did go before the town manager.
Okay.
And I think there's a confusion of what kind of legal representation we're discussing.
All right, so my question is, I think I heard it said that we wouldn't hire a attorney for the Board of Health because it would be opposing opinions. Is that correct? They would be fighting against each other legally? Is that?
We hire, yeah, we're not, like I said, if you want to submit questions,
No, so that would be the town manager could answer that if he chooses to.
yeah.
Well, I think I've already answered the question a couple of times. I appreciate that you don't like the answer, but the Board of Health has access to town council. Not say that we would never hire it. They've used the same counsel we use. However, we are not going to hire an attorney that's going to have an opposing position to the town. Just like you wouldn't do that in your own lives. You can't have two attorneys opposing each other.
Well, doesn't the Board of Health represent the safety and health of the residents of the town?
So does the town.
I'm just appalled at this meeting tonight to see the uncooperation between our town officials. And everybody claims that they're working together, but it's obvious to me that that is not the case. And the way people have talked to each other on these two boards tonight is absolutely appalling. So I don't see where there's cooperation here, and I don't know what's going on here in the town, but you guys need to get your act together.
Hi, I'm Linda Martin, 25 Emerald Court. And I have a lot of comments, but I think I'll put some of them in writing. But what I want to address right now is that you're admitting then that having this facility in town will lower property values. Because one time I was told this would be an improvement.
I don't think that we're admitting that at all.
Well, then you're negotiating assistance for people who have lower value.
No, we're trying to provide something in the HCA to address concerns that were brought forward by you.
Okay. Well, all right, then I will, as an abutter.
I don't personally think that property values will be impacted in a negative way at all. In fact, I think they're impacted more by what's there today.
Those are not visible to most of us because of the way our community has just put their landscaping and design into preventing us from seeing anything that would be industrial zoned. But let me just say, frankly, I'm embarrassed by the amount that was offered. If this project is approved and I attempt to sell my condo, this will not even cover my closing cost. This is less than 4% of our value of our homes. And if you say that some of us will lose value of $25,000, maybe about 10 or 15 of us are on the list, I think this will lower the value of every condo that's in Emerald Court. And I have calculated that based on this estimate, the value of Emerald Court will go down by $3.25 million. And if that's true, that is a big impact on the tax base. So I again, just am appalled by this decision and to only include a certain amount of people when all of us at Emerald Court will be affected. Never mind the people who live closer on Washington and Clinton Street. That's my comment. Thank you.
Alan Powers, 1314 Emerald Court. We have at least 3 condos for sale right now. I know of a villa house who was offered $20,000 more than they were asking. When he realized that the battery was going to come to this, he backed away. 2 other clients backed away. We're in a position where it's difficult to even sell a condo at Emerald Court for the value that it is and should be today. Keep that in mind. It's not the future, it's here now.
Do we have any other residents who would like to be heard?
My name, excuse me, my name is Diane Khatib. I live at 70 Chestnut Road. I am nowhere near this facility, but I do feel very badly for those that are. I do have a couple of questions. This 30,000 gallon water requirement, how is that going to affect our water bills, which are already astronomical? Where is that water going to come from as a town that has no water? On the agreement, which page is it? This page actually that was given. In the actual legal document, it says on the back page that was omitted from the presentation, a muni facilities payment of $150,000. What is that for?
That is to provide efficiencies to municipal buildings. So, for example, if we were to change out all the lighting in town to make it more, more affordable by using, more modern lighting, or trying to eliminate, improve efficiencies in heating and cooling and things like that to try to save the town money and make the buildings more sustainable and environmentally efficient.
Okay, thank you. It says 50,000 for youth sports, 50,000 for the food bank, 50,000 for parks and rec, and only 50,000 for the aging council. They're the ones, the elderly, the seniors in this town, they're the ones who are getting abused by all of this. Why isn't more of that money going into the council of aging so that they can get some sort of benefit out of it?
So that would be something that I would suggest you submit in writing, because the back and forth thing.
Okay.
I just want to keep it consistent with everyone. And I would, yeah, so if you can submit that in writing, and then again to the Board of Health and to the Select Board, we can then forward it on to get those answers back to you, okay?
Thank you.
And I don't want to interrupt you, but just everyone else coming up, if you have numerous questions, if you get one question, you're looking to get an answer, what's your most important? The rest, you can read them off, and so we can hear them, but the rest submit in writing, and we'll get the answers to everyone, okay?
Thank you.
And this is more of a comment. It was said that we were going to get the $2 million, but it does state in the agreement that that is only assuming the project built is a 4-hour duration, and it's committed to negotiating in good faith with the town. So that $2 million does not appear to be locked in. And last but not least, yesterday there was a fire at the gas station in the center of town. We had 2 towns called in for assistance, Wilmington and Billerica. Are those towns going to be trained? Because they're our backup. And it's kind of scary to know that they're in Texas, and we can't wait for them to get a plane here if there's a problem. We need help. We need the help in the immediate areas. Even Boston is not a close enough area should something like this go out of control. So I think you really should consider getting some training and some equipment for the other communities in the area, because we may need it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other residents who would like to be heard?
Jerry Corbin, Emerald Court, longtime resident. A couple things. First of all, we've heard a lot about transparency tonight, to which I kind of call bullshit. The minutes for this meeting were published, around 3 or 4 o'clock this afternoon, giving us little of any time to really look at it. You want to talk about transparency as well. The steering board has and let's say the lawyer can respond to, you were supposed to have the expert witness and Mr. Curran's testimony submitted on Friday. As of today, it still has not been submitted. So you're not even in compliance with the steering board. So enough on compliance. Now let's look at some of the dollars you're talking about. You talked about the 3.81 million one time. If you add the numbers on the chart that you came up, it comes up to about 800,000. So where's the other 3 million? If you look at the taxes, you say 2 million a year, that turns out to be about $64 per resident in the town of Tewksbury. So 2 million sounds great, $64 per resident sounds like pocket change. If you look at that one-time fee, because it's almost twice the 2 million, you're talking about $121 per resident for a one-time fee. The other thing is, if you look, and I've beaten this up many times with the board, if you look at the population northeast of Old Boston Road, because you can't get to Hillman Street without going to Old Boston Road. If you look at that and you calculate the population density for that area using standard square mile thing, it's almost 9,000 people per square mile, which puts you in the same ballpark as the city of Lynn and the city of Lowell. If you look at Tewksbury as a whole, it's about 1,900 per square mile, so we're about 4 times more dense than Tewksbury as a whole. So that kind of tells you that's not really a great spot for it. We've heard some talk about safety. We haven't heard anything really about safety. What we've heard is about mitigation. We've heard about what happens if there's an accident, what's going to go on there. We have not talked about safety. We've also heard about negotiation and not having a position. I think that's been the problem from day one. We haven't had a position. And having a position doesn't mean you don't look at facts. doesn't mean you don't collect scientific data. The fact that the town is supposed to have one expert witness, and that witness wasn't hired until mid-December, kind of blows the mind. I mean, the steering board has been in place since what, March, April, and you finally hire an expert witness 2 months before the testimony's due. I was pleased to hear last night, Mr. Kratman beat up on National Grid because he wanted to make sure they put their telephone poles in a safe location. And he also kind of beat up on the Main Street Grill new proprietors, reminding him how important it is and how we would not tolerate any violations to their liquor license. But I haven't heard anybody say, oh, battery systems are great, hydrogen fluoride's great, noise levels are great, 30-foot fences are great. I haven't heard anybody say anything to that effect. You mentioned response times, 2 hours response time. How do you do a 2-hour response time when we have a 24-inch snowstorm over a 48-hour period? I mean, so I guess I am very frustrated. I have zero confidence in the Board of Selectmen. I have zero confidence in Mr. Curran. And I just, you know, as someone said, you guys got to get your act together and actually represent the town of Tewksbury instead of looking at your own self-interest. Thank you.
Do we have any other residents that would like to be heard at this time? Is there any other residents that would like to be heard?
Hi, my name is Donna Robitel. I live at 527 Shawshene Street. So I didn't bring a speech. I continued to write letters since like September. And I disagree. I'm not saying there's wrongdoing, but I disagree that you have no control. I feel that the DPU, the EFSB, they have been transparent, that word. They welcomed, they scheduled public officials first at the October 9th meeting. There's a review still going on now. Comments could be submitted from your Board of Health, from your Conservation Commission, and they count and they have weight. And I think the DPU should be asked, like tomorrow, is this what you meant, that the hands of the community is tied? Because I understand that down the road, the company could say, if you say something negative or take a position of opposition, that you're not negotiating in good faith. Certainly now that it's set up. But prior, if that was your scheme of thinking, again, not accusing that of a bad thing, that strategy is not what, if it is what the DPU meant, then they have not been transparent, because they claim there's meaningful engagement. And to the best of my knowledge, there hasn't been 1 second of engagement with the Board of Selectmen, except for the agenda for this proposal for the company on the agenda in March and afterwards, but never once for a resident. I've asked in writing, residents have asked, and we just look at it differently. I've asked for clarification from the DPU, asked town officials to get that. I mean, I understand about MEMA and the emergency, how that all comes into play later. I've made my phone calls. I understand that. I do not believe that there's something missing here, but that needs everyone on the same page as far as, well, it might be too late, or is it? Like, now you can't speak to something, you still can have your conservation write something to the EFSB and make it count. Because when they come to conservation after the exemption is given, that's what the exemption is. They will be able to put conditions on, make things strict. Hopefully the DEP will already have done that. And if they deny it, the DEP will supersede that. And if it is appealed to court, any judge would say, if I was a judge, I'd say, you've been working for a year with this company. Don't come here now. You've had opportunity to tell the decision makers. Those 5 people that were there that night, they're the administrative, they make the tentative decision, and then the 9 people vote, or however, you know, these people vote to make this decision. This is the time to tell them. And if I'm correct, they told us, the DPU explained it as, the weight of the comments count, not that we don't count, but official comments count more. And if I'm incorrect, I don't think I am, just call them yourself. Call the DPU office and ask for guidance. You still can ask your Conservation Commission to submit that letter for this testimony coming up, for these hearings. I know I'm being emotional. I wrote many letters, and I know that some of them are way too emotional. I received a meeting with the town manager. You know, I don't know why no one else did, and I appreciate that I got that meeting, but everything that I said that day before I got emotional, and I was treated very kindly by him and the assistant manager, is the next day I read the expert reports that have come in, everything I laid out to him and said, sir, the groundwater protection, you know, everything.
I'm not trying to cut you off, and I apologize.
Okay.
But I just want to make sure that, like I
I'm
said,
sorry
everybody
I'm
else
going
has
in
a
circles,
chance.
but
So thank you. If you have
I'm asking
additional
you to please call
questions,
the
like I said,
DPU and get
continue to
clarification on-
write in, we'll give you clarification.
Okay,
Thank you. Is there any other residents that would like to be heard, please?
Christine Chesbro with 398 Chandler Street. You know, I went back and forth to come up here tonight. I'm honestly embarrassed to be in this town in this situation and hear you all. But I have a question. You can hear me? Okay, sorry. I have a question. And I only got like 2 hours to look over the agreement. Is there anything on there that covers like health impacts? You know, if someone who's close gets hurt or sick sick with being from exposure, any of this? I didn't see anything, and I was just wondering.
So there are provisions for them to carry insurance, and the insurance, you know, if anyone has health impacts, they can file a claim against the company's insurance company.
What about the fire department? If someone, like John had presented the other night about the story about the firefighters who were hurt, what about them? Would that be a workman's comp case that would hurt the town?
So I would submit that question in, because just keep it to one, please.
Okay, I'll
Thank you.
submit it.
Yeah.
So I hope that the questions are answered, because we have sent so many questions and emails and nothing has been answered. Mr. Kern, I have asked you numerous times for a meeting. I was with Johnner that day, and you said to me, if you have questions, come on back and schedule a meeting. I emailed you so many times, no response at all.
That's not true.
Yes, it is.
So we're not going to rebuttal, we're not going to go into the rebuttal back and forth, but what I would, no, that's okay, it's both ends. What I would suggest, again, please submit the questions to the Board of Health and the Select Board. At the same time, I will, any questions that you have, I will speak for myself. I will make sure that it gets forwarded and request a CC'd response, so that I know that there is a CC'd response, whatever that may be, to every single one of your things. Even if the response is, I don't have a response, I want that to be responded. And that is what I am asking and going to be requesting, and making sure that it is CC'd, so that I know that all of those emails have been responded in some way, shape, or form.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to the Board of Health, you know, for taking this on so late. Maureen, John, and Dennis, thank you for what you have done for our town Select Board. You were elected, and Mr. Curran, you were hired to represent the town and its residents, not special interests. Your responsibility is to protect public safety and make decisions in the community's best interests. Prioritizing money over lives is unacceptable. The residents of Tewksbury deserve better, and you must be held accountable for these failures. So, Mr. Curran, public records were requested November 1st, 3 months ago. They still haven't been provided. I've been back and forth with the state. Residents deserve transparency, accountability, and answers. This delay is unacceptable, and it just makes us wonder what we are not seeing and if there's a reason behind it. Thank you.
Is there any other residents who would like to be heard? Step up to the microphone.
I'd like to make a couple of comments that I've been able to find, and then one
Give me
question.
a name and address for the record.
70 Chestnut Road, my name's Tom Khatib.
Thank you.
So the first thing I did find out fairly fast, by the way, property values. Okay, the average property values in the danger zones drop 5 to 10%. Houses, the condos in Emerald Court sell for $600,000, 5%, $30,000. Doesn't even cover the 25%. So you might want to rethink that. Thank you. I read a lot about been reading a lot about the fires here, and I'm really nervous about that, mainly because my son works right across the street from this. I've been reading your presentations. What do I see a lot of? Reasonably, somebody else making decisions. What I don't see, definitely in a lot of the plans. So finally, the question, who is responsible to the entire Merrimack Valley watershed and all the towns affected? By the way, you put this thing out, as somebody said earlier, you produce hydrochloric acid, you're on the Merrimack Valley watershed that runs all the way to Newburyport, and all of those people get water from it. We might want to think about that and where that money's coming from, because they're going to sue us. They ain't going to worry about East Point, who's owned by a company that is in a group that has pretty much elected our last governor. So you might want to think about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jean Ciro, I'm from 1320 Emerald Court. I've listened to this and I respect everyone that's made comments. I appreciate the comments, but I believe that the entire room has forgotten some people. I have been a registered nurse for 50+ years. I was employed for an organization that had to evacuate 180 patients. You do not know what goes on when you have to evacuate 180 patients. They are removed from their home. There are no places for them to go. They're out in Western Massachusetts. Their family can't see them. I'm here to speak for those elders. I'm an elder. I'm a healthy elder, but I will not sit back and let this town take advantage of all the elders that are located at Emerald Court and also over at the assisted living. I have worked at the assisted living. I have seen the people, how they operate. They're very low functioning. And you don't know the anxiety that you would cause uprooting them and what you would do to their families. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other residents that would like to be heard? All right, seeing none, I'll listen to a motion to close the resident section. Second, do we get a motion for your order?
Can we get a motion to close the public? Can we get a motion to close the public section?
Motion to close public section.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well.
I'm going to turn it back over to you for your final comments and questions, and you can go through your board members.
Okay. Any final comments or questions from the board?
My questions were for the gentleman who left, so,
Okay. Chris?
No, I think it's best I don't say anything right now.
Susan?
You've all heard my comments, but tonight is a different one. I just want this to go to both boards and all boards in this town. I never want to see the disrespect I've seen tonight at this meeting. It doesn't matter who believes in what or who wants what, and I believe we're all on the same side somehow. But we should never, ever speak to anyone disrespectful, no matter what. You're better off listening, like the rules. You listen, you take it home with you, and then we discuss it later. But it's like bringing your family business out in the open is what we just did. And I'm embarrassed. That's all I have to say. And I just hope that both our chairs will ensure that all of us are respectful.
You're here.
George?
So on that note, I thank you, that experience for mentioning the one thing I think we can, if nothing else, one thing we can learn is the chairs to get together before any meetings that we have from now on and come to the decision, because I'm a big time believer in the structure of a meeting. And so I hope this is not the last meeting we ever have together, because it'll show me what really is making. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So all of you know, yes, there's been a lot of frustration. I think a lot of the frustration is not knowing a lot of the information. And I do, and I've said it before, I thank the town manager for getting together, after, you know, whether it be since, you know, from the beginning or not, but has tried to get together and put this together. So I do appreciate that. I also want to apologize for losing my cool. I did. I will, you know, it was a back and forth, and I should have been more civil. And so I want to apologize for that publicly, because I should have been more civil and I should have had the more professionalism, and I did not. So I apologize, and I do want to continue working together. Even if we do not see eye to eye, I do believe that we all want the same thing. I am doing my best. I think the board is doing their best with what we have. And we might not see eye to eye, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't work together and continue having some type of communication. So I do agree that we should, and I hope that we continue to have more meetings like this and move forward with, you know, any type of concerns that we have, that they are being heard and listened to and potentially agreed upon. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Mackey?
Well, first of all, thank you all for coming out tonight. I've had a number of discussions with, I see people in this room that I've talked to, whether it be hour-long phone calls or coffees or whatever it may be. I haven't had the chance to talk to everybody. One of the things that came up for me throughout this process was a lot of these questions that were asked tonight, there's no reason that it could not have been put on the select board agenda earlier, and those questions could not have been submitted. There's no reason we couldn't have opened for written questions to be submitted like we did tonight earlier, because the core theme that I saw through all the discussions was fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And I don't believe that the select board has done a good job, myself included, of pushing that information out. There are things we cannot discuss when we are in negotiations. That is true. And those of you who I've had conversations with, I was very clear on, hey, I can't go into that piece. But I answered as many questions as I could. And we as a board could have done a better job at that. Because a lot of the questions, like we heard tonight, you know, how's it going to impact water bills? How is training for adjacent municipalities going to happen? These are all questions we could have answered that have nothing to do with negotiations. So I think that is something that is a takeaway for me personally to push harder on in the future, and I'm hopeful we can be better there. Now, I'm glad to hear that we want to work better, we want to have more transparency, we want to be more respectful. I do want to reiterate my comment earlier that the town manager works for the select board. So if there is a problem, the buck stops with us. So nobody should be deflecting and making the town manager absorb. You elected us, not him. We hired him. So if there's a problem, it is our responsibility to fix. Okay, so I know that he's the face, he's the one that gets all the calls and emails. It is, we are the ones that need to respond there. So please keep the, as much as you can, given the uncertainty and fear, don't let that backlash on him. That needs to come through us. Now, I wish I could say you all got a great glimpse, and I know a lot of you have been following a lot more closely over the past 6 to 8 months of how things work. And I heard a lot of comments about how they do not work well. I would encourage you to stay engaged after this project, no matter what happens, because votes matter, elections matter. And we have had egregious mismanagement for the past year, and it is, I wasn't embarrassed tonight. because I've gotten used to being embarrassed from mismanagement. So if we can't have a chair of a board who is going to communicate, who is going to communicate with other chairs, who is going to make sure residents are being heard, not say they're being heard, make sure they are being heard, then I don't know what we're doing here. So my embarrassment is unfortunately done, but I hope that those of you who I did get a chance to speak to, your questions got answered the best of my ability. Excuse me. If there are any outstanding questions, please make sure you submit them in writing to both the Board of Health and Select Board. As was mentioned, even if it is we don't have an answer for you right now, you will get a response. That is the key thing, and we should have done this earlier. So I encourage you to please stay engaged. Do not be discouraged. Make sure you put it in writing. Make sure you submit your questions and comments. Some of us do care. It is not falling on deaf ears. Thank you.
Mr. Russo?
Yeah, I just, from my perspective, I'll offer also my apologies to Chair Braga. I think from the standpoint of trying to defend Mr. Curran, I think a little bit, regardless of what we all think, I think at the end of the day, I agree with you, Melissa, that, we are trying to work together for the benefit of the community. I understand that, again, as I said earlier, we come at things maybe a little differently. So regardless of that, I think this was a little bit of a turning point from the standpoint of trying to figure out how we can work better with not only the Board of Health at times, but other boards in town, right? This is, because again, I think somebody mentioned earlier, it's not just this project, right? There's other things going on in the town that impact the schools, that impact planning, that impact conservation, and all the other things that go into it. I think as far as this process goes, I do, we listen from a select board perspective, meeting after meeting, and I think that preparation helps us, and I think that's what's going to prepare us for whatever's to come next, and I don't think anybody really knows what's to come next. I think we're all trying to sort of navigate this process in a lot of ways, but I'm committed to that process. I know that my colleagues are committed to this process, and we're going to continue to do what's best for Tewksbury, so.
Mr. Ryder, are you still online?
He is.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Yes, again, my apologies for not being able to be there in person. However, I thought it was important that I was able to call in and listen to the residents. As other board members have stated, I've spoken to many residents, and I'll speak for the board, we do care about the residents of this town. We do care about, it's not just money. But what the board has been trying to do, understanding the process, we all know this is new, understanding the process, this is ultimately being permitted by other boards, but the select board did what we thought is right by having those executive session meetings, getting ourselves situated to be able to come to an agreement if this project is to move forward. There is no perfect project, none. And we all try to do our best. And that may not be, for some residents, that might not be good enough. But we are all trying to do our best that every single resident in this town, not just the abutters, every single resident, every single day. So again, we all learned a lot tonight, and if anything, this will prepare us for whatever comes down the road. But again, we do care about the residents, and we do listen to them. And could their job in getting information out there? Absolutely. But we're doing what we have right now, and we're going to the residents. And again, any other questions, please forward them to both boards so we can get you the answers that you're looking for. It may not be the answer you want, but we'll get you the answer. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Well, I thank everyone for coming out tonight. We want to answer your questions. We want to try to figure out all the concerns that we have from the residents, try to get whatever public safety measures we can put in place. Like I said, this is a frustrating process. If this was coming before us in town meeting, I think we'd be talking something differently of what's going on. And so it's just, when we have to go before a siting board, it's not easy to negotiate and try to get the answers and try to, the fear of leaving things up to the state has been something that we've been dealing with quite a while. We've seen what's happening in the communities. We've seen what's being forced on other communities and what's coming down to the state. And trying to get the answers and try to make sure that you're all heard and try to make sure that the safety is, like somebody mentioned today, that I argue safety. Yes, I do, on every single thing that I vote on. So if I have the say and it's before us and we're issuing the permits, yes, you're going to hear me numerous times talking about safety because we have the authority. We do not have the ultimate authority on this. This is going through the state. And so we're going to do our due diligence to work together. And I think it's important that all of us elected officials work together to try to get this. I also am frustrated that we're not working better together. I think we need to. My door is always open. If anybody wants to make a phone call to me and ask a question and sit down with me, I've never said no, ever. So if there's questions from another board member, I don't care if it's conservation, Board of Health, schools, any time someone has ever asked me to sit down and not get the control they need, not get the answers that they need, I've always said yes. And I'll continue to do that. That I take pride in. And I think we need to work better to make sure that instead of the politics of this going on, which is, we're dealing with it in the state level, locally, we got to put all that aside and try to put the residents' needs first. And that's what we'll continue to do. So I thank everyone for coming out tonight, and I appreciate listening to all your comments and concerns. So thank you. At this moment, I'd like to listen to a motion to adjourn.
Make that motion.
All right, I got a motion. I got a second. All those in favor, please state by saying aye.
I like a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion and seconded. All those in favor? Chair votes aye as well. Good night, Tewksbury. Thank you.